Hello, and welcome to the Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Tarah Toohil of the 116th District in Luzerne County. One of the biggest and most important challenges facing the state legislature each year is the adoption of a budget. Governor Corbett has proposed a budget that holds the line on spending. It's now the legislature's job to craft a spending plan for the next fiscal year. Joining me now to discuss the budget is Majority Appropriations Chairman, Mr. Bill Adolph. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming.
Nice to be here, Tara.
It's good to have you. And we're glad to have you on since you're an expert in this area. Can you give us a brief overview to start on the budget?
Sure. Well, you're absolutely correct. The governor has, addressed the General Assembly and proposed a budget. He did that in February, and he has proposed a $27.1 billion, that's a billion with a B, spending plan. The good news is there's no tax increases in his plan. Our job now is to hold hearings, which we just finished, the Appropriations Committee, and hearings lasted 3 weeks, and it's no different than probably what a CEO does with his folks, brings in all his department heads, or a municipality brings in all their department heads, and you go through their budget, and they explain to the Appropriations Committee why they can do the job based upon this type of funding. And we also hear from the universities and from the state system colleges as well. So it's a very interesting, it's a long process. We start probably around 9 o'clock in the morning and last till probably 6, 7 o'clock at night. But it's well publicized. It's aired on PCN. And the Senate does the same thing. So it gives us an opportunity to hold a conversation with all the governor's cabinet. And then once we get all that information, which is where we are now, we start talking to individual members of the legislature and see what their priorities are, and whether it be hospital funding or whether it be K-12 or some of the universities. So last year, we were able to stay within the parameters that the governor set up for us, and that was roughly $27.3 billion in spending. But last year, Tara, as you know, we had a loss of stimulus money, federal stimulus money, over $3 billion, which represented about 12% of our revenue. So when you lose 12% of your revenue, certain areas are going to feel a decrease in spending. I know we've all heard from all our school districts about the decrease that they received the year before. However, when they really looked into the numbers, they found out that we actually increased spending at the state level, and the decrease that they received was as a result of the loss of federal stimulus money.
Right, and that takes some explaining to do.
It really does. It really does, because you have folks that don't understand that we received money from the feds and then we distribute it along with our state money. The school districts were told when they received this federal stimulus money that June 30th, 2011 will come and the money will stop. And however, once you send money out to whoever it may be, it's very difficult to not receive it again. But we were able to do it, and the school districts have been able to cope with it. This year brings us another challenge, and we're in negotiations with the governor and with the Senate. And I think we're going to put together another on-time budget. And a lot of people kind of think that's kind of corny, on time. Well, shouldn't it be on time? I mean, that's part of your job. Well, 8 years of the previous administration was never done on time. It went as late as December, almost 6 months late. And those people and organizations and state agencies and higher education institutions, they don't receive the money until the budget is passed. So they were out borrowing the money, paying unnecessary interest, and really in a state of flux because they didn't know what was going on. So I kind of emphasized some of the highlights and some of the good points about getting a budget done on time with no tax increase.
Right.
And I think most of Pennsylvania residents understand that. They're doing the same thing, Tara, living within their means. Households are doing it. Small businesses are doing it. We are slowly but surely coming out of the worst recession in my lifetime. So we're still only collecting revenue at the 2007-2008 year. So
right.
It's not as if we're sitting on a pile of cash here. And many of us, and I know you feel the same way, you don't want to start taxing people when you're coming right out of a recession. We don't want to cause an inflation.
Right.
And a lot of times when you start throwing taxes at a time in a recession, it turns into inflation. And that's the worst thing we can do right now.
So it is important to emphasize the fact that it was an on-time budget and that it was a no-tax budget. And we were dealing with a $4 billion deficit at the time.
No question about it. And, we were able to put that together. And, obviously there's some sacrifices to be made. We streamlined state government 5 to 6% right across the top. And guess what? The sky's not falling down. Government continued. And each year it will get more difficult, and that's what we're finding out. And I'm sure you've heard from some of your county commissioners, for example. I think we're heading in the right direction with the governor's proposal to combine like these 7 grants that the state sends our counties for a lot of human services type issues. But they had all types of strings attached to them. You had to spend them in this particular area and on certain types of folks. Well, now we're putting it into one big grant, a block grant, and giving more flexibility to our county commissioners and administrators. However, it's 20% less than last year.
Right.
And I've talked to a lot of commissioners. Matter of fact, my predecessor at this job that I have right now is now county council in Delaware County.
Okay.
And I had a long talk with him, and he feels that the 20%'s a little bit too much, and that's where we're starting with, and we hope to restore some of that.
Well, we have in our district a lot of economically disadvantaged people who rely heavily on the human services.
Yes.
So we've been working with all of those nonprofits and the human services to look at those cuts. And they're worried that they're going to have to do a lot of administrative cutting and that it will be some jobs that are affected because of those cuts. Although the flexibility, I think, is nice. The 20% cut is a worry.
It is a worry. And the last thing that we want to do, Tara, and I know I've received a couple letters from you. We don't want to hurt the folks that need it the most, and we're going to try to. That's the whole thing about the block grant. Make it a little bit more flexible, so this county administrator can move that money around and make sure it gets to the kids and the disabled
Right.
That need it the most. Yes.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
good. And that's part of this negotiation process.
Oh, absolutely.
The give and take, I guess, of it. Can you explain that a little bit for the people?
Well, someone has to introduce a bill in the House. The governor just makes a proposal. Okay, so I will be introducing I will be introducing the governor's proposal. Last year, at the time that I introduced the governor's proposal, we also introduced the House Republican amendment to the governor's bill. And quite frankly, I thought we did an outstanding job in putting together a balanced budget and restoring the areas that we felt was important. I thought the higher education. Last year, the governor came out with a proposal of a 50% decrease. Now, you got to keep in mind, Tara, 14 colleges, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania actually own them. Kutztown University, Shippensburg, Westchester. There's 14 of them. We own them, and the 50% would have been almost impossible for them to live with. But the governor challenged us, and we were able to find areas in the welfare department, almost $1 billion, Tara, in the welfare department. And this was not partisan politics. The Auditor General, Jack Wagner, who I think is doing an outstanding job, quite frankly, had proof as a result of audits that there was a lot of fraud and abuse in the welfare department. And we used the Auditor General's facts and figures, and we came up with a decrease of 4%. That's what the governor proposed, and this was able to help us restore some money for K-12 education. And we put an extra $100 million in an accountability block grant. And we restored the higher education funding from a 50% cut down to an 18% decrease. And I know for a fact that the state system presidents were very pleased with our proposal, as well as the 4 state-related. It's very important to keep higher education affordable for Pennsylvania residents, and I think we're challenged to do the same thing this year, because the governor also is proposing to cut them 20%, so and 30%.
Right.
So we have our work to cut out, but I think we're up to the challenge. And then when we pass that bill, and it goes over to the Senate, and our colleagues over there go through our bill, just like we went through the governor's bill, and they amended the bill. And it was a bill, when it came back to us, we were able to agree on. And the governor passed it on June 30th, which is on time. And the loyal opposition, my friends on the other side of the aisle, they tease me, oh yeah, Bill, you were on time by 15 minutes. Well,
right.
15 minutes is 15 minutes, but it wasn't 6 months.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I was happy that it did pass by 16 minutes, just so you could say it was on time. But however, even if it passed the next day, it's considered on time. We're not holding up state government like the previous administration did.
Right. And there was a lot of problems associated with that, with the 103-day budget impasse and people going on unpaid.
Oh yeah, it was a mess. It was a mess, and it was an embarrassment. We made national news, and we were the last state in the nation to pass a budget. So that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I think even though the decisions are going to be difficult, and we're going to be able to make them and live within our means.
And get back on track.
Get back on track. That's what we're going to be doing.
Let's take a short break, and we will return in a moment.
Great.
Did you know that Fort Indiantown Gap, located in Lebanon County, is home to Pennsylvania's only Veterans Memorial? C.J. Frederick of Westchester, Bucks County, submitted the winning design that now honors those men and women who have sacrificed their lives in defending this great country. Dedicated to the Commonwealth on October 7, 2001, the Veterans Memorial is surrounded by freestanding walls and houses an amphitheater, which can accommodate large crowds during an event. Strategically placed in the front of the amphitheater is a tomb that reminds visitors of those who gave their lives protecting the freedoms of this nation. The design suggests a war-damaged structure in which Frederick wanted to impress upon those visiting the horrific arena of war. Now you know.
Did you know that in the corridors in the first floor of the capital of Pennsylvania, there are nearly 400 individual mosaics? The idea for creating these intricate tiles was first suggested by Henry C. Mercer in 1902. A year later, he received the commission to prove 16,000 square feet of pavement tiles for the Great Rotunda and corridors of the new state capitol building in Harrisburg. Mercer set about designing subjects for approximately 400 mosaics. He chose as his general theme the history of Pennsylvania, and he soon realized that his tiles could tell stories. Although the arrangement seems random, the mosaics are very thoughtfully placed in the floor. The tile sequence is roughly chronological, beginning at one end with the scenes depicting the Native Americans. The mosaics progress into the story of European habitation in the New World and encompass the Commonwealth's triumph through process and intervention. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Tarah Toohil. I'm pleased to have Representative Bill Adolph as my guest. He's chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and we're discussing the state budget. And when discussing the state budget, we have to talk about what we're spending. So what we spend is based upon the revenue that we have.
That's right.
Can you explain the revenue a little bit to us?
Well, Tara, in any type of government, the only way you receive money is through taxes and fees. We don't sell anything here. We don't manufacture anything here. People are paying taxes in their paycheck, and that's the largest part of our revenue, the personal income tax, the PIT. Pennsylvania's income tax rate is 3.07%. It's a flat tax. You make $100,000, you pay 3.07. You make $10,000, you pay 3.07. So it's, you hear an awful lot of people talk about the flat tax. Well, we have one. And there's a very few deductions that you're allowed to take at the end of the year if it's employment related. But other than that, there's really no other deductions on the tax return. And that represents 40% of our state budget, people's personal income tax. And when people are out of work, obviously we're not collecting the 3.07 on their wages. If they're laid off and they receive unemployment benefits, the state of Pennsylvania does not tax unemployment. We do not tax pensions in Pennsylvania, which is, we're one of the few states that do not tax pensions. I don't think an awful lot of people out there realize that. We don't tax Social Security. So we really rely on people working to receive 40% of our revenue. The other tax that represents a big chunk of the revenue is sales tax, 6% in most of the Commonwealth. It's a little higher in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, but those two cities keep the extra over the 6%. And that represents 32%. And once again, we don't tax all goods. Services, number one, we do not tax. Whether you're an accountant or whether you're an attorney, whether you're a doctor, whether you're an architect, an engineer, none of those services, none of those professional services come into play when the 6% sales tax is. It's mainly retail sales. When you go out to dinner and you buy lunch or breakfast, prepared foods, you pay tax. Appliances, your dishwashers, your televisions, all your household goods, you pay a 6% sales tax. But there's still clothing and food that you get at the shopping center. When you go to the food grocery store, there's no sales tax on that food. It has to be prepared.
Okay.
So that represents 32%. Right? So you got 40, you got 32. Now we got 72% of our revenue in just those two taxes. And everyday people are paying those taxes. Okay? Not large companies, everyday people. Third tax, 7% of our revenue comes from corporate net income tax. Okay? It's one of the highest corporate net income taxes in the nation, 9.91. All right? And of course, you have to have a profit in order to pay that tax. And a lot of companies the last couple of years have not had profits.
Right.
So we're not collecting that corporate net income tax.
Or they just don't want to do business in Pennsylvania because the tax is so high.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. It's we have not been rated very high. Matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. We have been rated very low as far as a company wanting to come into Pennsylvania to start a business here. 49th and 50th, matter of fact. And one of the reasons is the corporate net income tax, but the other one is the capital stock and franchise tax. Kind of a crazy tax. You got to be a business person to understand it. But what's tough about that tax is you don't have to have a profit to owe the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's based upon your assets.
Okay.
It's an asset tax. And we are slowly but surely phasing that capital stock and franchise tax out. And I think if we do that, I think we'll become more business friendly and we'll attract business, which actually brings in more revenue if you reduce a ridiculous tax like the capital stock and franchise tax. So that represents 7%. Then there's some other taxes. Obviously, we got the inheritance tax that I'm sure, Tara, you've heard from your constituents. Right. It's not a great tax, that they say, in Pennsylvania, you never stop paying taxes. Even after you die, you're still paying taxes, And we, in my stay here in Harrisburg, we have been able to reduce it and repeal some of it. There's no inheritance tax between husband and wife or wife and husband. Okay, those assets that were owned jointly, they go to the surviving spouse tax-free. The next of kin, it's like a 4% tax, and it goes as high as 12%, I believe. Certain other beneficiaries. But that's a tax that I would like to see repealed permanently. But you can't repeal taxes at this particular time when these other taxes are not coming in the way they were pre-recession.
So most of our revenues are based upon the sales tax and the personal income tax.
Without question.
And with the national economy the way it is, if people are out of work, they're not paying that personal income tax. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
How we're the state, we are affected by the feds.
Well, there's no question about it. When Governor Corbett took office, we had an unemployment rate of about 8.5%. Okay, and in one short year, we've lowered that unemployment rate 1%. Okay, and I really believe that has a lot to do with the natural gas industry that came into Pennsylvania, and we're blessed with that natural resource, and we were able to come up with a local impact fee. But 100,000 new jobs have come with that industry, and I don't have to tell you how expensive it is to put gas in your car. I think future generations are going to be using natural gas to drive around, and I think the state should take the lead and start using natural gas for their fleet leases. I know there's going to be an awful lot of folks converting from oil to natural gas for heating their homes and so forth. So I think it's a natural resource that if we put together a good package and a good plan, we're going to see pipelines going from northeast Pennsylvania down to southeast Pennsylvania and supplying those 2 million homes with natural gas. And we're going to be setting up exporters along the Delaware River, which will bring in thousands of new jobs. So that's why I think the future is bright, and we just can't raise taxes at this particular time. Let people get settled in, let the new industries come in, and let the free market take care of itself.
And
I think we'll be
it's
in good-
important. Our district's very excited about getting our children trained for these Marcellus Shale jobs. And a lot of the people that were very upset with the drilling originally have been calling the office because now their oil bills have been so high that they're trying to get natural gas, and we don't have the access to get it to their homes. So it's very interesting and something that we're going to have to move quickly on, I think.
One of the educational proposals involved in this budget is allowing an individual, man or woman, who goes to a not necessarily an academic school, but a school where they learn a trade. And obviously with this new Marcellus Shale, they would now be eligible for a FIA grant, right, which they'll be able to pay for that tuition, possibly through a FIA grant. And these jobs are out there waiting for them. I mean, $50,000 a year jobs out there waiting. So I think their future's bright, and we'll get this budget done on time. And I guarantee you there won't be increase in taxes to the hardworking Pennsylvania residents.
Which is so important, that we're changing Pennsylvania, getting us back on the right track after so many years of reckless spending, reckless borrowing, which was leaving our children with a dire future.
Tara, when the previous administration took over, we had a budget that spent $20 billion. In 8 short years, Governor Rendell's last budget was proposed for $29 billion. That is a 33% increase in 8 years. The cost of living was only 19%. That type of spending is unsustainable. And I mean, that type of spending has brought countries down.
Right,
I
right.
mean, you know,
that chart is just unbelievable.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean it's way out of control. It's way out of control, and if we just spent cost of living since 10 years ago, our spend number would be about $25.5 billion.
Okay.
So it's not as if this is a plan at $27 billion that is below the cost of living. We're still ahead of the cost of living as compared to 10 years ago. So we're trying to put together a balanced budget, which we have to. Unlike the federal government, we have to put together a balanced budget.
Right.
You know,
right.
Hopefully someday they'll do the same in Washington.
Well, hopefully, and that's a completely different animal.
Yes.
But I feel good about the fact that this new administration, we've been able to make really tough cuts that people don't want to make. It would be great to just continue borrowing and living the way that we were and not have to make these tough cuts.
Yeah.
But
and individual legislators like yourself, they will be advocating for their districts, okay, to make sure that their hospitals and their schools receive enough money in order to properly educate their kids.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're going to be doing.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time here today.
Thank you. Thank you,
We're glad
Tara.
to have you.
Right.
And that's all the time that we have today. If you have questions or comments about the budget or any other legislative topics, my contact information will be on the screen in a moment. Thank you for watching, and join me again for the Legislative Report. Thank you.